Thank you, Mr. President. My name is Senator Suleiman Nazif, and I represent Bauchi North. Let me start by welcoming the ministerial nominee to this distinguished Senate. Mr. Babatunde Fashola, SAN. Indeed, you are a determined, well-accomplished Nigerian. You have excelled tremendously as the governor of Lagos State. How would you assess old generation politicians and leaders vis-a-vis younger generation politicians as leaders concerning economic development and political development in Nigeria? Please respond. Nigerians would want to hear from you how you related with so many Nigerians, how you interacted, and how you view the two sets of Nigerian leaders. We wonder how you are stable and how you stabilize Lagos, bearing in mind the complexity of Lagos State. So please respond.
Senator Ina Baribe.
Thank you, Mr. President. My name is Ina Baribe. I represent Abia South. Mr. Nominee, I have just two questions for you, very simple questions. Number one, did you really build a website with 78 million and also sink a borehole with more than 300 million? Two, one of the biggest problems we have in this country is the question that always arises between those who come into office through support from their bigger brothers. And I would like to know, Mr. Nominee, what is your concept of loyalty? Thank you.
Mr. Fashola, you take those four questions.
I will start in the order in which the questions were presented. And to say first, in line with all of the work that took place in Lagos, to say generally that I could not ever attempt to personally take credit for the work that you have commended about what happened in our state. It was a team effort. There was pioneering work by all of those who served before me. And it is a continuing effort. And so it would be extremely inappropriate and immodest of me. And indeed, they wouldn't let me if I attempted to appropriate personal responsibility for all of what happened. As far as value-added taxes are concerned, they are what they are, taxes for adding value. And so they are first taxes that generally seek to stimulate production, improve economic activity, and so on and so forth. So those who benefit from it must essentially contribute to it. Secondly, because it is a form of consumption tax, we must also understand that there are limitations to how vast its application should be. And generally, food items, baby things, and all of those things are excluded from it. And in the main, many economies have used it to, as it were, redistribute incomes and reduce inequality by taking more from those who consume high-end products, luxury products. So, specifically to the question, I don't have scientific basis to say today that there is an argument for increasing the value-added tax. And I think before we decide to increase taxes, we must first optimize the capacity to collect what is in place. One of the things we did in Lagos was to increase the number of people who were contributing to the Commonwealth instead of seeking to increase the number of taxes that we levied. And so, between 2007 and 2015, the number of people who were paying taxes grew from 500,000, who were bearing the burden of the whole state, to 5 million. But our numbers show, in the population of about 21 million, that there were 9 million plus or minus people earning income in the state. So there's still scope for collection of taxes from close to at least 4 more million people. In that sense, the burden of managing the state becomes lighter when the responsibility is shared and spread. So I think first, before we decide whether we are taking up the VAT or we are reducing it, is to look at where we are today and what mechanisms we can use to stimulate collection. Today, online technology is a very versatile tool for tax remittance, for payment and settlement of bills. How we migrate to those platforms very quickly for government work and all of those will probably help in that sense. Because one of the disincentives that we saw initially, as successful as it was, asking people to go to a bank to pay, because we wanted to reduce interference of public servants with cash, helped. But after a time, it became cumbersome, and we had to look for new ways in which to encourage them to make payment cost-effective and also comfortable. As far as distribution is concerned, I think one of the ways in which we can stimulate the economy of this country, at this moment when there is a need in any event to diversify away from oil, is to encourage productivity and to allow the states who generate the most in terms of these taxes to keep as much of them. Competition has always been known to stimulate productivity. And as much as I can say that I haven't probably traveled all of the 36 states of Nigeria, the knowledge and information available suggests to me very clearly that there is no state in this country that is unable to undertake some form of productive activity. Whether it is from milling rice in the most rural areas, whether it is processing cocoa, whether it is timber processing. So those kind of multiplier activities support the growth of industries and are capable of happening across the nation. Yes, some states may be disadvantaged in terms of their level of development, but until we are in a position to say, let us make tough choices, let us encourage this to happen because of tomorrow, rather than seeing today, the incentive to produce will not be there. As far as security is concerned, that is the primary purpose of every government. It is the purpose for which government exists, to protect its citizens and their assets. And it is the toughest job that any government can have. It is a challenge that leaders across the world are facing. Terrorism, youthful gangs, cults, and so on and so forth. So, my attitude was to see criminals as my competitor. And in a competition, my desire was to win. And to use my resources to outspend the competition, outthink the competition, and outmaneuver the competition. But our risks are different. As a governor, my job was to ensure that nobody died. My job was to ensure that nobody robbed. So I had no margin for error. Every citizen that was robbed, I had failed that citizen. So I had to be right every time. The criminal had to be right only once. But even when the criminals were right, what was important was to demonstrate to our citizens that we weren't without solutions. And many of the incidents that happened, we were able to resolve, bring the criminals to justice, and that put a lot of confidence in the citizens. Now, this was an architecture that we didn't own. It was a federal government architecture, a federal police arrangement. But at the time, they operated without enough guns. They operated without enough uniforms. They operated without protective vests. And they operated sometimes without vehicles to even respond. And where there were vehicles, there was no fuel. In my interactions with them, these were the first things that came out. And it was clear to me that this was not going to be something one person could do. So we brought all of the stakeholders in, the banks who were being robbed on a daily basis then, without a capacity to respond. And one of the things I told one of the bankers was, look, listen, if you can protect and bulletproof your bank, if you care about your workers and your customers, can we bulletproof every home? If we bring some of these monies and we put them into a pool and give these policemen, it will probably help us. And so, the point, sir, is that there is a necessity first to decentralize. The numbers available to me is that we have probably a standing police force of about 500,000, less than 1 million in any event, to a population that is heading towards 180 million. So we are under-policed. And even if the federal government decided to take on this responsibility on its own, could it really do so in the micro level that is necessary at the state, at the local government, and all of those levels?